Hey guys, for today's video we're going to break away from the norm a little bit. I usually keep my videos to just Ford fuel injection tech. Don't usually do product reviews or anything like that, but I'm pretty excited about this one. My buddy Jeff brought over something really cool, still relevant to EFI, and it's early Bronco related, and I think you guys are going to like it. So what do you consider this? Is more like an unpaid advertisement. So what am I talking about? Poly fuel tanks for the early Broncos. Now I'm pretty excited about it, because poly tanks don't rust. I'm the kind of guy, I build a rig and then never really drive it, and it'll sit and sit and sit, and next thing you know I gotta dump the gas tank, and well, steel tanks, they rust on you. Poly doesn't. Most of your steel tanks run about $1,000. There's the stainless steel fuel tanks. I also know the guy that builds those, and he's a pretty solid guy, but man, those tanks they're made for someone in a different tax bracket than me, as beautiful as they are. So these poly tanks here, Jeff's running them for $500 retail, just basic tank as you see it, and he's got a bunch of different options as far as skid plate and fuel pump assembly and all that kind of good stuff. Now, full disclosure, the guy that's making these tanks, he's a really good friend of mine. He's probably the only other early Bronco owner in my county, except for that one that's sitting in the weeds that they're going to get to someday, but we all know how that goes. I'm not in business with A Tank or Jeff in any way. I helped a little bit with just bouncing ideas off, but I not involved financially. I'm not like a silent partner or anything like that. But he is my friend, so don't expect me to bash on the tanks either. I actually think they're really cool and a great idea, and I'm excited that they're finally here off of the production line. So anyways, I'll quit rambling and let's get to showing you some of the features of them. All right, so this is pretty much how they come from the factory. What the $500 gets you is kind of a bare tank. Jeff's calling these the A tank. Now these are set up with kind of a thick pad here and here. This one you can do one of the tube type fuel sending units if you'd like. There is no provision in the front of the tank. Anyone with a stock tank knows that that's where they like to leak. You can also put an EFI pump in here. This dimple right here, this is set up to where you can tap it to 3/8 if you drill it all the way through, if you want to run just a straight line down to it for a carb pickup. Or the very center of it is centered so that you can use your hole saw and drill it yourself. Now, if you aren't the DIY type guy, Jeff will absolutely do that for you. He's going to be offering different options with the fuel pump installed, without, that kind of thing. You'd have to get with him with pricing for any sort of additional add-ons. But this is set up for a 2003 F-Series fuel pump, like we see here. Now, these ports come labeled for you. They are pre-sized, but they are not completely drilled out. So this is for your big vent for your filler neck. This is 1/2" MPT. And these ones, if you're running evap system, these are 1/4" MPT. You just have to drill them out the rest of the way and then run a tap through them and install your fittings. So like for your filler neck, you would tap it for this, and then you got hose barbs and just put your hose in. Again, I'm sure if you wanted them tapped and ready to go for fittings, that's probably something Jeff will offer as an add-on. But the bare 500, that gets you the tank as we see it. Other than this filler neck has not been reamed yet. He does ream that for you. We'll show you on the cutaway tank. And here's just your cutaway tank with it already reamed out for you. In addition to the ports on the side, he has one in the bottom of the tank here. Again, not drilled out, but sized for 1/4-inch MPT. You could use this to install a drain plug, or I suppose if you want a gravity fed with a carb, you could probably even install a hose barb into it too, so I'm sure that's an option. So now if you're going to do the DIY thing, instead of having him install the fuel pump for you, this will center the bit on your hole saw, so you'll cut out your hole. He's also going to be offering these rings here, laser cut with little pilot holes, so that you can drill your pattern into the tank, and then when you're done with that, you can tap them, and you would install it like a keychain into your tank, so it would sit on the bottom, and that's what you bolt your fuel pump to. He says that the new ones are going to have a couple additional holes for 1032 in between these. That way you can get this thing in place by hand, screw it in a place to hold it before you install your fuel pump. Now, something to be aware of, the hole spacing is not equal all the way around, so you want to line this up with your fuel pump. Make sure your lines are coming out this way before you drill your pilot holes. So like I said, for the sending units, you can put a tube type in here if you just drill a hole for your hole saw for it, or you can actually use the sending unit out of the F-150. Well, how's that, you ask? The ohm rating is different between new and old Ford. Well, Jeff has these little adapter boxes that can handle that for you. I think he said they run 50 bucks. These go behind your cluster. You intercept the signal from the new style sending unit and then wire it into your gauge. And I think he said you actually program these with 3 little buttons inside there where you set full, medium, and empty. And it remembers those settings and does the conversion for you. I think that's kind of cool because now you got one less hole to drill and you can still use the new style Ford sending units. So this cutaway tank was actually the first tank off the assembly line. He did this about 3/16 inch thick, and if you look at the ribbing in there, I think it's plenty strong. Now, the capacity was supposed to be 20 gallons, and anyone that's not liking the capacity can kind of blame me, because I told Jeff I would rather see a 20-gallon tank than a 23, just to have a little more ground clearance. I've seen a lot of people smack the 23s on rocks and obstacles coming down off of them. This tank is not 20 gallons anymore though. Jeff wanted it thicker than even this. So he added about another 1/16 to it, and that additional volume takes up another gallon. So these tanks are right around 19 gallons, he said. And the last option to point out is he's also going to be offering a skid plate for these. We got the A-Tank logo on there. These are laser cut too and bent on a hydraulic brake. And in the back there you can see he's provided a little area for that, that drain plug port. So I told you all that I was a huge fan of poly, and well, here's the proof. I'm actually running a factory poly tank in mine, but it's only 12 gallons, so the additional 19 gallons are going to be really welcome. If you'll notice, I have done mine with a 99-01 Explorer fuel pump. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop my tank out, and we're going to see if the bolt pattern is the same with that F-150 as your 99-01, because then a lot of you guys will already have a fuel pump hanger on hand. And the other thing I want to see is how clearance is with the factory 12-gallon versus the 19. So I'm going to get that done and update you guys on it. Okay, so looks to me like the factory poly tank is right about 4 inches below the frame rail at its lowest point. I got my tank out, so here's the two tanks out side by side. I've pretty much lined up the filler necks of both of them. You can see it was designed to slide under that front cross member, so it hangs out a bit more in front, but not any more than this fuel line does. So I don't think you're in any danger of hitting it with the diff. But if you are on a stretched wheelbase, it probably is something to consider. In the back here, it looks like it's, so I don't know, half an inch wider, maybe an inch. But I believe the reliefs that are cut in this thing to clear the cross members probably isn't an issue. I don't think you're going to be getting into a bumper, but we'll get it in and see. Okay, so I have all four of my original fuel tank brackets removed. And the reason I removed those ones towards the front is this lip right here is going to just tuck under this cross member. Now I'm just going to fit it for now, but I think when I do the permanent install, I'll probably use some sort of foam tape or maybe a old rubber inner tube or something, just because I'm not a guy that likes squeaks. So I'll probably just try and insulate it so that the poly can't rub against the metal and make any sort of squeaky noises. All right, looks to me like that's about where it's going to sit. I still have to fab up my brackets on the sides here, and I'll probably do, you know, foam or rubber on those corners when I make those out of angle iron. We'll probably make a template out of those to give to Jeff so that he can crank some of those out for you guys too. Doesn't really look like it hangs down too bad, but let's get a measurement. All right, so measuring in the same exact spot, I'm coming up with about 6 3/8 of an inch. So hangs down 2 3/8 inches lower than the factory poly tank would have. I'd be kind of curious if any of you guys with the big 23-gallon tanks would take the measurement from the same spot. All right, well, I got my fuel pump out of the old tank. I want to see if the bolt pattern is the same between the 99-01 Explorer pump and that 03 F-150. Anyone that's installed one of my harnesses knows about my serial killer handwriting, and it's very evident if you see the circles I tried to make with the plasma cutter. I would say Jeff's laser cut stuff is a little nicer. One thing I had done with mine when I Frankensteined this together is I had built an internal baffle system with a return line hose that clipped on here to kind of make sure that this is always full, and it could always suck some in, but it would be slow to drain out if you're on a hill or anything. Looking at the new tank, I don't know how important a baffle would be. I mean, you would have to be like a quarter of a tank and angled really, really hard before I think your pickup sock would become uncovered. But I would say if there is an improvement that could be made, it would be some sort of internal baffle. This was an absolute pain to install in the tank. As you can see, it's hinged to be able to go in at an angle, and then stuff gets tightened up in stages. What really would have helped me a lot is if I had Jeff's idea of adding a couple extra screw holes here and using 2 screws to hold that ring in place, you know, countersunk. That way you're not fighting that ring at the same time. Now, another thing worth pointing out on the F-150 hanger is you've got these 2 holes here. So if you wanted to try and duplicate something like my my little baffle box that gives you a couple minutes of run time, you know, if you're at a bad angle, that would give you a really easy way to attach to it. Well, the good news is, using the F-150 pump on my ring that I made for the Explorer, looks like they use the same bolt pattern. So high probability you're going to be able to use the Explorer hanger. It's just going to be a matter of actual depth for the Explorer hanger in the tank. This is another hanger option that I just stumbled across and thought it might be useful, especially for the guys that are going to run like an OBD2 style evap system. This hanger has a provision for the fuel tank pressure sensor. It also appears to have a rollover valve in it. It has pressure and return. And the way it worked is the pressure came out of this, went into the filter. The filter had another line that was still on the inlet and returned it into a fuel pressure regulator in the tank, which then bleeds off the excess here. Very similar to how the 99-01 Explorers worked, except they didn't run it out of the tank first. But I thought I would mention this, especially guys that are wanting to become evap compliant. And 1 year earlier than this is out of a 2000 Mazda B4000. And the 99 is the same setup as this, but it doesn't have the return line exiting. It just has this pressure regulator above the fuel pump like the 99-01 Explorers did. Now you'll notice that this style of pump doesn't have any bolt holes in it because it used the screw down type of retainer. You could probably drill your own if you wanted. Jeff tells me if you give him the ID and the OD of a ring that you wanted him to create, he could do that for you. And then drill your own holes, not only for something like this, but if you're running, say, like one of the Holley sending units or something of that nature, with an ID or ID and OD, he can cut a ring for you. All right, there it is with the skid plate in place. I think it looks pretty good. I also like that I still have pretty decent amount of room between the tank and the frame rails. This thing wasn't hard at all to wrestle in place. It's so light being poly, and having the room, it just kind of tucked up in there nice and easy. Actually kind of impressed with how slick it went. Obviously I don't have any straps in place. I assume we're going to need longer ones, and figure out what we're doing to mount the skid plate. But there's the overall, and y'all can ask Jeff any other questions regarding this. But I thought I would push the product for him. I'm not a huge channel, like a little over 1,000 subscribers. 90% of those are probably Bronco owners, so help him target his market a little better. All right, so you've seen the tanks now. You decided you want one. How do you go about getting one? Well, there's no website set up yet. I know that's still in the works. You can email broncoatank@gmail.com. That'll get you a hold of Jeff directly if you want to get one shipped to you right away. I know looking at shipping cost, it seemed like it ranged from 100 to 150 bucks in the lower 48 anyways, kind of depending on location. Don't hold me to that. That's just kind of last I heard from him. I know he's reaching out to the big Bronco vendors, so hopefully can ship in bulk to some of them, and you'll be able to go to your local Bronco part supply and get them. But for now, you can just email them. We will be hauling some up to Supercell West here. Man, that's like 2 weeks away. If you want one with your name on it, go ahead and email them, and we'll drag some up to Supercell West. I think that about does it. See ya.